I'm Belle Bear. This is Sacred Mechanics.
"30 years ago, technology took over business. Everyone knew technology was taking over. Everyone knew the internet was the future. Everyone knew we needed websites. Everyone knew we needed whatever. No one within the organization could code, knew how to put a website together, knew how to create a URL or they just had no clue. So they started hiring people who understood that, right? There was this subset of individuals who were kind of in the background. No one was paying attention to them, and they were well ahead of their time. And all of a sudden, business started caring about technology, and all those individuals were just nothing. And then boom, they were the most important person in the company, right? And that was when now there's been technology. CTOs are very important within organizations. Consciousness is going to be the central focus of the future. It's the last frontier. Because artificial intelligence, first of all, it's not artificial. It's intelligence. Artificial is the construct we put on it. We created it. Everything on this planet is fundamental to our experience and our experience. Everything's consciousness. Knowledge is structured in consciousness. You want to call it artificial, you want to call it doesn't matter. It's all consciousness. More and more individuals are starting to talk about consciousness because this limited tool, this mind that we've had since the beginning of humanity, has put us where we are. The same mind that creates a problem can't solve it. And we are finally getting to the point where consciousness on this planet is shifting enough that people are waking up and saying, okay, what we've done, the tools we've had, the way we've only focused on the mind, there has to be something else. Whether the scientist is talking about it, whether they're seeing it on 60 Minutes, whether individuals like you are talking about it, or really, tree-hugging hippie spiritual people like I used to be are talking about it, right? It's becoming part of society, and they want to know what it is. And they make the big assumption that consciousness is the same thing as conscious. You and I are conscious. If we both got hit over the head, we'd be unconscious.
Yeah.
That's not consciousness. Everyone's like, well, my consciousness, this is awareness. No. Everything physical and non-physical is consciousness. You, me, whatever's behind you, our thoughts, our mind, the mountains, the aliens, the planets, everything, right? Conscious is our five senses, is our awareness, is you and I going back and forth. There's been a lot of wellness programs, right? In the last 20 years, we've pushed upon people meditation and mindfulness and Tai Chi and yoga, which we should have. It was perfect timing. I'm a big fan of it. I've been down that path. I had a very, very enlightened teacher. I understand all of that stuff very, very well. My question to that is, how does the world look? How does business look? It's never been more divided and conflicted, because the way we went about these wellness programs is we never talked about levels of consciousness. Mindfulness and meditation, to most people on this planet, reckons Buddhism. Well, in the West, we got a lot of Catholics, we got a lot of atheists, we got a lot of Baptists. There's a lot of people that think yoga is the devil, right? Which is perfectly fine. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm very neutral with this. Well, when you bring a wellness program in and someone comes in and says, we're going to have everyone meditate, you got a significant amount of people in the organization that, in a sense, were almost offended, or they're not going to participate. As we're moving forward at this very quick, very increased, sped up level of clarity, the word consciousness is being used more. People are starting to want to understand it more, not from a spiritual sense, not from a Buddhist sense, not from a yoga sense, but like, what is it? Donald Hoffman, Bernardo Kastrup, all of these individuals are starting to talk about it more in a fundamental reality type of our human existence. So just like technology took over 30, 40 years ago and everyone started worrying about technology and having a CTO, this is the same thing, and it's going to be 10 times more important, because everything is consciousness. Because where technology came from, where the CTO came from, where everything business is built off, including artificial intelligence right now, it's all consciousness. So if I'm an organization, small, medium, or large, I'm going to want someone on staff who understands consciousness very well, very clearly, very high level, and can explain it to any level of my business.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, there's a lot to unpack here. What
I'll try to shorten my answers in the future.
just to, stay in the business sphere,
Mhm.
in have you heard of Jack Gropal? You may have. He came up with the concept of the corporate athlete, and it was all the way back in 2001 that Harvard Business Review published an article about this, and it's a triangle of corporate athlete, they're high-performing
Okay.
people, and at the pointy end, the little end of the pyramid is spirituality.
Mhm.
Okay, so I got into a debate with someone about this actually, that it should be actually at the bottom, where when they would say spirituality in this pyramid, it would just basically address consciousness and self-awareness, I think,
Mhm.
and what are we doing here? But it was actually all about spiritual well-being, meaning what they'd found is if the more purpose and meaning a person found in their work, it would prevent burnout. So that's one of the things. But I'm looking at consciousness as a new way to look at the corporate athlete or the business and how it runs as a holistic body, I suppose, is to improve teamwork, ideas generation, endurance, and navigate rapid change from a totally different base. Because absolutely, you're right, the world is waking up to, why am I wasting my life rolling out of bed, going to a job I hate, paying for a house I'm never in, yada, 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 all of that. So if we can pull in some conscious awareness and understand the very nature of our being, people may gravitate to work they're better suited to. And also that corporate responsibility and the effect on the environment, like the chain reaction is massive. So it's a very exciting concept that you're
Yes, it is.
proposing. And so this idea about spirituality, you're right, it's 20, 25 years ago, but what has happened is almost nothing in a way. And we're there.
No.
We are there now,
Yeah.
where it's okay to say consciousness, because I know what it's like skirting around boardrooms and dealing as a creative. You get away with a bit more, but you have to be very cagey about inspiration and ideas, and it's all from the same place. So to have open dialogue and even a framework within an organization for people to share and talk about the nature of reality and their experience as humans would be wonderful. And to have someone bounce ideas and teach or point them in a direction, as it happened to you, of a reading path and a remembering path and all of that, would be a really cool place to work,
Well,
I think.
and see, let me add one thing here, and this is why this position is so attractive and why it's gaining so much traction, is because I completely agree with what you just said. Having someone on staff who understands what the spirituality end of things very well, basically like a teacher on hand for anyone. I can talk like my teacher stripped everything away. It is very rare in these podcasts, in these interviews, that I talk about spirituality, because we've got to understand the vast majority of this planet does not care about spirituality. They're either religious, they're atheists, or they just don't have any frame of reference, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
where spirituality, that's where the groups and individuals and the wellness programs, that's where they've missed the boat, because it really looked good on paper, really looked good on the wall, really looked good to when they did a PowerPoint that HR and the CEO said yes to a wellness program. But again, how many people participated? 10, 20%? The vast majority of people don't care about anything you and I are talking about at this point in the conversation. Actually, let me take that. It's not that they don't care. It's just that they don't have the awareness of it, right? So when this position comes in, it's not spiritual. It's not another part of the wellness program. They need to understand it, but they're going to come and they're going to work with the CEO and help that CEO go from here to here. They're going to help marketing go from here to here. They're going to help customer service go from here to here, because the vast majority of people, they just want to pay their mortgage a little bit more simply. They want to be a little bit less stressed out. They want to have a little less division and conflict within their organization and in themselves internally. If you look at Dr. Hawkins, you look at Ramage, you look at all these books about levels of consciousness, again, the vast majority, in a sense, this is not intelligence. You can have a 160 IQ Harvard grad and still be very low in clarity and consciousness. The vast majority of this planet is basically in elementary. And if people want to ask how do you know that or why, just look at the division and conflict, look at the wars, look at the politics, look at how we look at people, right? We're continuously divided. Look at within an organization, the difference between executives and employees. Our mind, the tool we've been given, is an either or tool. This position will be able to help when that time occurs individually with a customer service, or maybe a C-suite executive gets back from a 10-day silent retreat and they want to better understand what their teacher was telling them, right? That's a very small part of it, though, and that's the difference here. In the past, with my 10 years with my teacher, I focused mainly on that, but I realized, it took me a couple of years to realize, that's a very small group of individuals that I'm focusing on. And I've always wanted to bring something to the masses that gave them the ability to go from 5th grade to 7th grade, that gave them access to the power of consciousness, because they do have it. Consciousness. The wise fish swimming through the ocean sees 2 young fish and says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" The 2 fish look at each other and say, "What's water?" You and I, your listeners, everything is consciousness. Everyone needs to know that. Everyone at every level of this planet, intelligent-wise, clarity-wise, age-wise, needs to understand they have access right here in this moment they have access to the vast resource of consciousness. So I want to bring this position to organizations to help the CEO, to help the C-suite, to help HR and hiring, to help the financial officers see clearly the P&L, to help a VP or a mid-level manager handle their customers better, handle their employees better, and also to reduce the division and conflict between the employees and the executives. To be at the watering hole on Tuesday afternoon and someone starts talking about something they're complaining about, and just listen and be neutral. That is the number one thing, the big word that comes up. And I always ask, how many people do you know are neutral? I've yet to have someone say, well, I know someone. No, I think that's the priceless part of having everything stripped away, your bias and conditioning, knowing that I'm not Republican or Democrat. I'm not Catholic or atheist. I don't have a dog in the fight. So when you open up to me, or I open up and ask you a question out of curiosity, I'm not looking to see if you're for me or against me. I'm legitimately curious. How did you get to that point? What are you thinking? Why do you not like Susie because she's a Democrat? And vice versa. Ed, why do you think she hates you because you're a Republican, right? Start understanding the question of what's better, heads or tails of the coin. Well, they're the same. Exactly. So why are you creating so much division and conflict in this world? Because the main point here is we've done this since the beginning of humanity. And we legitimately believe at some point in the future, one side's going to win and the other side's going to lose, and we're going to all live happily ever after. No. So this position can be spiritual. It's a very small part of it, but it's more tactical. It's legitimately a Trojan horse for business to bring out just a subtle shift of awareness. Because most executives are not going to lead with the heart. They're nowhere near that time in their life or that time in consciousness or their level of clarity. So all of these consultants coming and saying, we want you to be more heart-centered. You can run them through a month-long program or a 2-week program. Does it stick? No, because they're not ready for it. So I want this position to be more full-time and helping people and being with people at every level and really helping them understand consciousness and their awareness.
Yeah. So essentially, to get this going, though, you need early adapters. And these are the C-suites going to, 10-day silent retreats of Vipassana and things like that, where they're wondering how to pull it in a palatable way into their organization.
Yes,
because they have a diverse base. They can't just go, everyone, we're all going to Vipassana for our Christmas party for a week. Not going to happen.
No.
And that's where you could come in and speak for the C-suite, those beautiful ones that are running their business from that place. They're rare, but I am hoping for the future that there is a lot more but someone has to start, and how to integrate. And then what's going to happen is it's a bit of a pass it on thing, isn't it? Where if they've got 100 staff or whatever, they're going to carry that forward into future workplaces and have a certain expectation.
Yes, exactly. 100%. And that's the good thing about this position, the way people ask about it, is it would report to the CEO, but it would have no authority over any other part of the company. So that, I think, builds trust in the employees, because they're not there telling anyone anything to do. They're
Yeah.
legitimately a secret weapon for customer service, for a single employee, for a C-suite, for a VP, to basically just want the time around them so they can raise their clarity and their consciousness, and they can see things in a different light. They can be more creative. They can be less divided and conflicted. Truly, once the employees in the company understand what this position is about, and that trust is built after the first month to whatever, I think the individual, whoever is that position, will not have enough time in the day to get through all of what people want from them. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because when you're neutral and you've got consciousness and you've got clarity, everything coming from you, funneling, channeling through you to the individual, is going to be as pure information, knowledge, and advice as you can possibly give. And that creates less division and conflict.
Absolutely. I'll make a prediction for you. I think that it's going to have amazing uptake, and then it's going to filter through into the business schools and the universities and be taken on.
Amen. That's what I think too. I think, yep.
And then, because I was thinking about school, like, wouldn't it be great some of these high schools to have something like this? And then I'm like, no, even to start in university and business school. I'm working through an MBA at the moment and just did 3 months of a leadership program. And this is how I'd learned about the corporate athlete and the Harvard Business Review. And I was just the odd one out, the whole thing. There's accountants and lawyers and such. And I'm like, this pyramid is upside down. And people couldn't see it. And I wasn't going to start preaching anything. It wasn't a spiritual position, but a consciousness position of, we're all people here having this experience. Wouldn't it be better if we just flip it and see what it feels like to live that way? Because they're worrying about burnout and like work-life balance and all of this other stuff, but it just scratches the surface if the core isn't on an equilibrium.
Well, think about it. We've never had more coaches, never had more consultants, never had more books on life hacks, never had more books about happiness, never had more access to more knowledge, to more information, to more everything we've ever needed to be better, faster, smarter, stronger, happier, more enlightened, everything. We've never been so unhappy. We've never been so divided. We've never been so conflicted. We've never had so much burnout, and the retention rates are through the gutter.
So we keep intellectualizing everything.
We keep focusing here, which is a tool that is continuously an either or. It'll never know the whole, ever, ever, if we don't go one step deeper, ask that deeper question, and go into consciousness, which is where this came from, the source. We'll just keep repeating history. And it's been proven time and time again since the beginning of humanity. We've always been divided and conflicted. It doesn't matter. The story, there's always two sides. We have to jump into consciousness. We have to get past everything you were talking about in that MBA program. But we also need to remember, very few people are going to think like you're talking about. So can we come to their level and just take them from 3rd to 4th or 5th grade? Because you know as well as I do, when it comes to a universal impact, even someone going very subtly up a grade level, up a couple points in their level of consciousness, is huge for the collective. And that's basically all we can do. So we need to work towards that.
Absolutely. There's also a few other things here. Either life makes you want to have this information, or someone like a chief consciousness officer near you when things go wrong. Also, it's not cool to raise it or mention it, and it maybe can't speak from a masculine perspective, but you might be able to, but no one's going to say it first or be thinking about this thing first, especially, so it also puts it on the table as well.
That's where I come in. I have no problem. Like, I don't care how religious someone is, how political. I have no problem raising this topic and not getting pushed out of the room, shot, or beat up. So I will raise the flag there, and I'll be a part of that with this position.
Well, I'm hoping my listeners, whenever they're listening to this soon or deep into the future, that they're probably scrambling of how to start this or how to get more information and what to do maybe in their own work environment. So as a grassroots thing, where hopefully quite soon we see a groundswell of this, because you're only one man, how do we set this alight and make it go?
People like you. This is incredible. I'm so appreciative of this, because this is only a couple months old, and we've done almost 60 of these interviews in just 1 month. And with a lot of these hosts admitting they would have not had me on as soon as 3 months ago, which then someone like you understands the construct of time is dissolving, things are speeding up, consciousness is raising on the planet.
Yeah.
There's your proof. Because we're talking super business podcasts are having me on saying, I don't know what the hell you're trying to do here, but I'm really interested and I want my listeners to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like you said, someone is going to hear it, and whether they understand it or not, doesn't matter, but they're going to be like, maybe it's a fear of missing out. Maybe it's a large organization that just wants to be the first. I'm telling you right now, from a neutral standpoint, I don't care if it's a fringe company in Silicon Valley or someone who's really into this, like you said, early adapters, or someone who wants to do it just for the optics. Because I know with my personality and having the combination of skills and experiences I've had, I would love the bigger the company, the better. Because
Yeah.
if someone who has the exposure, someone who has the eyeballs of millions of people across the globe, they see that position. You and I both know how humans are with trends. You and I know how humans are when they see something like different or cool. They all want to jump on board. And if that is the catalyst to get 1,000 chief consciousness officers hired across the globe, great. Truly, I'm a neutral open box saying it doesn't need to be a specific person or a specific company or a specific time with like this that's what spiritual people have done. That's the thing I notice is they leave the structure of religion behind, and then they become really structured in spirituality.
Yes.
Spirituality's become a new religion. We need to, consciousness is open. This is not spiritual. This is not religious. This is everything and everything in between, but we need to be open. We
Yeah.
need to stop being restricted. We have a vast resource of consciousness, and every time we choose a side, it just keeps shrinking. And we got this tiny little box that our mind's in, and we pick sides, and we wonder why there's so much division and conflict. I want this
So,
position to just grow out and be open and neutral.
yeah, you're spiritual people that started on the spiritual path looking for something to find that they're in a confine, in a loop, will now perhaps be graduating into the wide open field of consciousness where they've
That'd be great.
run the gauntlet
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah.
They may be the ones on the fringes waiting to be pulled up and across this
That'd be
new
great.
field.
Yeah. I mean, that
think-
Adi Shanti, great teacher that said the spiritual path was created to exhaust the seeker.
I've never heard that. That is perfection.
I
Yeah.
mean, you, the people we look up to, you're spiritual, you understand consciousness. The people we read, the Ram Dassas, the Ramanas, the Nisargadatas, the Adi Shantis, Eckhart Tolles, once you get past hearing what you want to hear and you really get down to their deep level, they know that when they finally become enlightened, it's not that they know everything, it's that they've given up knowing everything. And they've all mentioned they come right back to where they started. So the spiritual, I always loved, he said the spiritual path was created to exhaust the seeker. So we stop seeking. Because everything he did with his Zen Buddhist teacher and all the meditations and all the practices and all the modalities, he knew it was just part of the distraction. He knew it was just exhausting him to the point where he finally said, okay, I have no clue. My mind's continuously working on this. I'm exhausted. It was all part of it. Ram Dass was the same way. After 20 years with his teacher and all the psychedelic trips and all the meditations, he's like, not a single one of my neuroses went away. And here I am, heart open more than ever.
Right. And it's more simple than you can even believe. And I think we
100%.
struggle to believe that.
Oh, I spent 10 years trying to figure that out. I mean, I put so much complexity into something so simple, and nothing changed about me. Nothing.
Yeah. In one ear out the other. It's all good till you go out into the street.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. That's got a lot of really interesting kernels for me and listeners. And it's a nice condensed message. I just want to ask you if you have anything else you wanted to raise or discuss, or just to get back to this starting point for others that are not in the position you're in of seeking chief consciousness officer sort of role and getting in amongst it, but they want to broach this at work and begin. Is there any favorite book or any path of exhaustion you could recommend, or for people to just have, or should they be just following you and keeping up to date, or what are you?
I'll give you my LinkedIn. I like people to be at my LinkedIn because there's an open conversation of this position of consciousness. I think one of the great books for the more spiritual type, it sounds like you got a pretty spiritual audience that are seeking, maybe want to get past seeking. I love Adi Ashanti. I love his book, End of Your World, because he's the most heart-centered, kind, open, just like the most gentle human being. And people will ask him questions and then just keep digging and digging and digging and digging. And they don't agree with it. And he just kindly just sits there and listens. And he's one of those guys that someone will say, hey, I got a really important question. When will I know my intuition and my gut is right? He's like, this is going to be easy. You never will. Please sit down. And they'll start arguing with him. But he's so kind. But his book, End of Your World, basically takes that apart in the gentlest, kindest way. It always, people who are past the seeking, they've tried all the modalities, all the practices, all the things, and they're just kind of like, just so upset, in the sense, frustrated and resentful for the spiritual path. They always end up around him, kind of like I did. Because you need someone to like fall into, and gentle, and someone to tell you your bullshit in the nicest, kindest way, and be like, oh man, I wish someone would have told me that 10 years ago. I think Adi Ashanti is good for your listeners. If I'm getting the gist, the correct gist
That's
of
good.
who they
It's
are.
just, I know myself as a listener on similar podcasts, it's just good to have something to follow up with if it's a really interesting subject. With this is fascinating, and we're going to hear a lot more about it. But yeah, these early adapters out there, you're going to get up and get moving, get across the consciousness, let everything go, and take it to work with you, which is the next.
And to those early adapters, this position can be anything you want it to be. It is a combination of 20 years of business, of running my own business, of nonprofit, of the spiritual path, of having an enlightened teacher. You can bring it into the business in a very, very corporate, professional way, to the point where we Trojan horse it in, and we will shift the consciousness and the clarity of everyone inside that company. I will put my life on it. I know how this works.
Yeah, that's awesome. Maybe we'll catch up again in 6 months or something and see what has unfolded. You're going to have a lot to talk about, I suspect. People are really highly interested in what you're establishing in the business world and beyond, hopefully education as well.
Yeah, and I liked your idea of it being like a part of the MBA program at Harvard, or these colleges, or a class of part of business. So yeah, and I'd love to catch up with you again. And if you ever want to do some time where it's more on the spiritual end, we can do that as well.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That opens a whole other door, and I'd love to hear about your decade of experience with an enlightened teacher. This would be cool as. Thanks for listening. I'm Belle Bear, and this is Sacred Mechanics.